Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I will be giving you my army tier list for Warhammer 40k competitive. This tier list will give you my thoughts on where I think each army fits into the current meta and which armies will give you the best chance of winning at a tournament. Keep in mind though that I still firmly believe that it's the player who makes the army and not the other way around. So just because I might rate an army in one of the lower tiers, that does not mean that it cannot win you an event. And just because I rate an army in one of the higher tiers, that doesn't mean that it will auto win you an event. I've seen skilled players do well with armies that I consider low tier, and I've seen unskilled players lose a lot of games with armies that I consider top tier. So this list is just to give you an idea of the potential that I think each army has if everyone who played in tournaments was around the same skill level. And the last thing I need to mention before we hop into the tier list is that this tier list will work on a 4-tier system: low tier, mid tier, high tier, and top tier. And I'm placing armies in each tier based on a few things, including their damage potential, survivability, mobility, utility, and how many good matchups they have in the current meta. And that about covers all the exposition needed for this video, so let's just jump right into it. Let's start from the bottom and move our way up. In the low tier, I have Grey Knights, Renegade Knights, and Necrons. So to summarize my reasoning for these placements, I think these armies are the weakest in the game, either because their good units are too expensive, they don't have great stratagems or combos to work with, or because the units themselves just aren't that great. Grey Knights suffer from all of these things for the most part. Everything they have is overpriced in my opinion, and their stratagems are very lackluster. Also, their units that are supposed to be durable really aren't that durable when you consider all of the 2 and 3 damage weapons that are in the game now. With Renegade Knights, they don't have a codex, so they don't have house traits, warlord traits, relics, or stratagems. Well, they do have 2 stratagems which help out a tiny bit, but not enough for me to think that they are viable. Also, Renegade Knights have no way to get inside of ruins, or great ways to deal with infantry hiding inside of magic boxes, which is actually a really big deal. So they are better as an ally in a chaos army, but not that great in a standalone army. And for Necrons, they have a couple of things going for them, but not too much in my opinion. Most of the things Necrons have to offer, other armies have to offer as well, but they just do it better. And their troops are pretty expensive too because of the cost of reanimation protocols that is tied in with their basic points cost, but that ability almost never gets used in a competitive game because a good opponent knows to focus down that unit so that it can't reanimate. As for their stratagems, they have a couple of okay ones, but nothing all that special in my opinion. In the mid tier, I have Space Marines, as in the Space Marine Codex, Custodes, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Tyranids, Harlequins, Thousand Sons, and Death Watch. To summarize this tier, I think all of these armies can make decent mono or solo builds, but when compared to soup armies, they just don't stack up. And I think some of these units from these armies are much better in soup, where they can have their weaknesses made up for by other factions, or they can make up for other factions' weaknesses. Most of these armies have glaring weaknesses that aren't horrible, but they do hold these solo armies back from being high or top tier. For Space Marines, they're kind of a jack of all trades. I feel like they are good at almost everything, but not great at anything in particular. So the armies that excel in certain areas beat them out. For Custodes, they have a very low model count and a low amount of command points, which means against hordes, they can be overwhelmed by a ton of bodies that can bog them down, and they will run out of command points very quickly. For Blood Angels, they have good deep striking units, but not that great of a main ground force. For Dark Angels, I think it's the same thing as Vanilla Marines, jack of all trades, but master of none. For Tyranids, I actually think that this army could be high tier, but they just aren't that great against Imperial Knights, and Imperial Knights are extremely popular right now, which I think is what holds them back. Also, Orcs do pretty much everything Tyranids do, only Orcs do it better in my opinion. For Harlequins, I think they have some amazing units, but I don't think the troops are that great. So I'd rather just take certain parts of Harlequins and include them in an Eldari soup army over playing them as a solo faction. Thousand Sons have pretty much the same problem as Harlequins. They have some amazing units, like Characters, Terminators, and their Zangors. Well, if you deep strike the Terminators and the Zangors. But other than that, the army doesn't really have anything going for it outside of them being in Chaos Soup. Death Watch has a few amazing units like Veteran Squads with Stormbolters and Storm Shields with a couple of Terminators included, but other than that, I don't really think they have much going for them. And if you spam nothing but Veteran Squads, you'll have a hard time dealing with Imperial Knights or Imperium armies that include Knights. In the high tier, I have Drukhari, Admech, Chaos Demons, Imperial Knights, Death Guard, and Chaos Space Marines. These armies can be very strong, but what stops me from putting them in the top tier is that I feel that they have minor issues unlike the top tier armies. For example, Drukhari doesn't really have any efficient ways to deal with knights since their best ranged anti-tank weapons are only strength 8. Drukhari does have Haywire Blasters, which can be pretty decent, but the two units that can use them are Talos, which don't have that great of a ballistic skill, especially if they are advancing every turn, and Scourges can be screened out and killed very easily. Admech has an amazing gun line and some great close combat units as well, like Dragoons, but their robots can get tied up in combat and made useless for the rest of the game by an infantry unit charging from out of line of sight, and the Dragoons need first turn in order to get their full potential. And even then, they can still get rocked by what's hiding behind the screen that they charged on turn 1. Chaos Demons have strong and hard-hitting units, but most of them die incredibly easy except for maybe Plague Bearers and other Nurgle units. Imperial Knights are amazing, but can't get inside ruins or deal with infantry hiding in magic boxes, which may not seem like too big of a deal, but trust me when I say that that can be a big deal if their opponent can hide their infantry in a magic box while holding an objective, which actually happens more often than you'd expect. It also sucks when you take a secondary like the Reaper, but now you can't get to any of their infantry because they're just hiding them inside of all these ruins or magic boxes. Death Guard have a pretty good gun line when you consider Forge World Dreadnoughts and Plague Burst Crawlers and Blightlord Terminators, and that's pretty much the only build that I've ever seen Death Guard played successfully. And Chaos Space Marines are very good, but their troops choices are pretty bad. But that's pretty much the only thing holding Chaos Space Marines back in my opinion. So overall though, all of the armies in this tier are incredibly strong, but they do have very apparent weaknesses that I feel stops them from being top tier. Now let's get into the top tier armies. Now these are the armies that I think are currently the best in the game. So in this tier we have Orcs, Tau, Genestealer Cult, Astra Militarum, Craftworlds, Imperium Soup, Chaos Soup, and Eldari Soup. Orcs are the better versions of Tyranids in my opinion. They shoot better, they charge better, they have fearless hordes as well, and they can deal with knights. They also have stuff like Grot Shields and the Green Tide, which makes them more durable as well. Tau have some of the best shooting in the game, and are one of the few armies in the game that can reliably kill a knight in one turn, which I think is needed in the current meta. Their stratagem to give +1 to wound to their entire army against a specific target is amazing for deleting one unit off the table in a single turn. And their Overwatch on 5+ is amazing because it counters most melee threats in the game. Also, their abilities Kuyon and Monka are extremely good and help Tau pick up momentum in turns 1 and 2 and let them coast to victory most of the time. Genestealer Cult is a better version of Blood Angels. They have amazing deep strike shenanigans that can't be entirely screened out because of their stratagem that allows them to come in 3 inches away from enemies. They also have their blip deployment, which can net them some small advantages in the first turn of the game. And they have some good spells and hard-hitting units. Astra Militarum has pretty much everything you could ever want out of a competitive army. They have good troops, good anti-tank, good anti-infantry. They have units that don't need line of sight when shooting. They have decent spells. They have units that can one-shot knights. They have units that are very durable. They have pretty much everything that you would want for a competitive army. And I feel that Craftworlds are also top tier, mainly because of flyer spam. Their -2 to hit flyers are still pretty damn good, even after the minor nerf that stops them from move blocking enemies. And even after that nerf, they can still move block enemies, they just have to do it in a different way now. You can do stuff with your flyers like denying charges by screening for your actual units, since the enemy can't end their move on top of a flyer's base or within 1 inch of the flyer's base. So you place a couple of your flyers right in front of your gun line, so your opponent literally can't charge your gun line without ending their move on top of the flyer's base or being within 1 inch of it. Craftworlds also have some amazing spells that still synergize well with their entire army, and they have the potential to delete a knight in a single turn, which again I think is needed if you want to compete in this current meta. As for the soup armies like Imperium, Chaos, and Eldari, it's pretty easy for them to be on top since they can cherry pick from multiple codexes to come up with strong combos and to make up for each codex's individual weaknesses. For example, Imperium armies can include Imperial Knights, which are amazing units whose main weakness is not being able to deal with infantry that are hiding in ruins or magic boxes, but they can include some Astra Militarum units in their army that don't need line of sight, so they can now deal with those units that are hiding in ruins or magic boxes. Same thing goes with Chaos Soup. Thousand Sons have some amazing characters, but they don't really have a good screen for them. So you bring the Thousand Sons characters in a Chaos army, but then you include some Plague Bearers from Chaos Demons, and now you have one of the best screening units in the game, screening for some amazing characters, so now you can give them immunity from shooting, so they can cast their psychic spells freely for multiple turns. So pretty much all 3 soup armies will almost always be in the top tier, just because they can cherry pick the best units and combos from multiple multiple books. And that's pretty much it for this video. This was my tier list on where I think each army fits into the competitive meta. As you probably noticed, I didn't include Inari or Sisters of Battle in this tier list, and that's because admittedly, I don't really have that much experience with those armies since their reworks, so I don't think I could accurately place them on this list. But other than that, I think this list is a good representation of the potential that I think each army has to win a tournament if all players at that tournament are of the same skill level. Also, please note that this video is based entirely off my own opinion, and my opinion is formed based off of my own experiences with the game and from researching tournament results. So if you think that I placed an army in an incorrect spot on this list, then feel free to comment down below and we can have a conversation about it. I love discussing Warhammer 40k and seeing other people's perspectives on the game, because maybe you see something in a way that I don't, and maybe I see something in a way that you don't. So comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this list, and if you think that I'm correct or if I made any mistakes. I would love to hear your thoughts. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content. And also, if you enjoy the channel enough, then consider making a pledge on Patreon to help me and my channel out so I can continue concentrating on Warhammer 40k and my channel full time. Without Patreon, the channel would not be where it's at today, and I definitely wouldn't be able to put as much time into this channel as I currently do. So with that said, thanks to all my current patrons. I love you guys and gals, and I can't thank you enough. Anyways, that's it for this video. My next video is going to be an allies tier list, so it's going to go over which sub-factions I think are the best for making soup armies, essentially. So hopefully you guys and gals are looking forward to that one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in that next video. Happy wargaming.